So once again, quick intro, Frank Aswani, CEO of AVPA. With me today is Karen Basiye, Joe Ogutu, and Serro from Safaricom. Before we get any further, can you please use the chat for everyone to just let us know your name, your organization, and where you're dialing from, as a way of just getting to know who's here. Celso de Silveira, welcome. So just use the chat to let us know who you are, your organization, and where you're dialing in from. Right, get your cell phones out. So if you haven't been to an AVPA session before, get your cell phones out. We'll engage you in a bit of an exercise. So if you take your cell phone and use the QR code, or if the QR code does not work, go to slido.com and use the number at the bottom. There'll be a section question for you. Please answer that question. So slido.com, hashtag 3501145. Or alternatively, do use the QR code to connect to the question. I'll give you 30 seconds to just get your responses through. We just want to get a sense of what spaces you're all working in. So are you in healthcare? Are you in education? Are you in, what are the various sectors that you're all working in? Banking, energy, blended finance. Okay. There's a whole mix of people here. Okay. All right. This will just help us get a sense of who's in the room. If you're coming in, please introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us your name, which city you're dialing from, and your organization. Okay, a lot of people in the energy space, education, interesting. All right, Abu, next question. Kathy from Trialogue, always nice to see you. Welcome. So where are you as an organization in terms of implementation of SDGs? So how embedded are the SDGs in your strategy? Do you guys live and breathe them? Are you just getting started, or it's not something you've done yet? Another 15 seconds to complete this one. Okay. It's good to see people are at various stages of implementation of the SDGs. I'll give it another 10 seconds for this question. Where are you in terms of implementation of the SDGs or inculcating them into your strategy and work within your organizations? Okay, so it's almost an equal split between those who started and those who are advanced. And it's interesting that that shows that everyone is doing something with SDGs. Okay, interesting. Next poll, Abu. Okay, that's it. All right, cool. So I'm going to get straight into the webinar, and I'll get to straight away connect with my two panelists, my three panelists actually, between Eve, Karen, and Joe, and this work that we're looking at with regards to the work that Safaricom has done has been recognized globally. They're seen as probably in the top 5 of organizations globally who've implemented and embedded SDGs, really converging profit and purpose. And I'm super excited about having the two guests with us today. So without further ado, Joe and Karen, do you mind having a quick introduction, literally in 30 seconds, who you are, why you're so passionate about this particular topic, before I get into the conversation with both of you? Joe, do you want to go first?
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see me. My name is Joe Ogutu. I chair Safaricom Foundation. I recently retired from Safaricom, though I still chair the foundation. But I've been in the communication sector for pretty much all my working life, starting with KPTC and then Telkom Kenya, and then joining Safaricom at inception. And so over the years, we have been very clear that when we're in business as Safaricom, business must be at the table when societal challenges, societal issues are being addressed. So our business has not just been about producing goods and services, but also being there to improve livelihoods. And we'll go into more detail as to that. And that, to me, really spoke to the issues that really keep me awake, that I am available to make a difference in the society in which I live. And so that is why I'm very passionate about SDGs. Just a brief introduction before we go into the detail.
Thank you, Joe. And don't let Joe cheat you about his retirement. When you see him, he does not look like a man who's retired. He's much younger than you'd imagine to be. Karen, welcome. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you so much, Frank and Joe. My name is Karen Basiye. I'm a director in Safaricom. I'm in charge of sustainable business, social impact, and the foundations. I've been working in this space. When you asked me to do a quick intro, I started counting the years. So I've been in the sustainability space from school to work. So I think if I count the overall years, I'm approaching 20 years in this space. So it's very fascinating to see many other people joining the space, because this is something I've been passionate about, and it's been my career path in Safaricom, and it's been a great honor leading the sustainable business and having these discussions on sustainability and just charting our own path where there was no path to follow. Thank you, Frank.
Exactly, Karen. I like that, where there's no path to follow, because in many of the things that we're doing in the impact space, many of us have to go to places that no one else has gone before. And that is what makes this space exciting, is we are solving problems that are unforeseen, we're solving problems that are unexpected, that are ever changing, that are wicked problems. And it takes guts, it takes real courage for us to go towards risk and to challenge what has not been challenged before. So I really like that particular way you ended the statement. So Joe, I want to take the audience through a journey of how Safaricom got here. And I want to, because you've been in Safaricom the longest, and especially around the decisions that led to this particular strategic position that Safaricom took. So tell me, in the very beginning when this conversation started coming up, how did you as Safaricom decide to take this direction? What made you want to be an organization that is deliberate about not just profit, but also purpose? So I'd like to almost be a fly on the wall in that boardroom as Exco was having these conversations about people. This is important for us to do. Walk me through that thought process.
So thank you, Frank. And I don't know whether it's just me. I'm so struggling to hear you. It could be my equipment. But as I've said, from the very beginning, Safaricom, took as its purpose that we are here to transform lives. That our business is not just about making profit, but we have to go beyond that to improve livelihoods. And the argument for us was quite simple, that if you hope to have a sustainable business, then you must ensure that the society around you is sustainable. It sounds like academic, but it's actually quite obvious that if the society around you is not sustainable, then you cannot really talk of your business being sustainable, because these are the people who buy your products, these are the people who buy your services. So they must be able to access quality health services. They must be able to access affordable education. They must have opportunities to improve their livelihoods and so on. And that's why I said at the beginning that we took the position that you have to be at the table We have to be at the table when those society issues are being addressed. And that's why over the years, Safaricom went into financial services with M-Pesa and so on, that would not be seen as traditional mobile communication services. We have gone into education, we have gone into health, and so on. So when the 2015 Sustainable Development Goals were pronounced, we saw this as an opportunity for us to integrate the SDGs into our own corporate corporate objectives. Now, Karen will go into details as to what process did we adopt, but I cannot say that it was an easy thing. What we noted at the very beginning, that if the goals do translate into our business processes and our business practices, then it will be easy to incorporate those. So the first task was really to convince the leadership team. Started with the leadership team, talk to them about SDGs. But the good thing is that we're already into sustainability and sustainability reporting, and Karen will go into details. So we launched that, I think it was in 2012. So already the issue of sustainability was part of the normal corporate agenda. So translating, therefore, the SDGs into corporate objectives was not as difficult as we initially thought. And so we then started cascading that from the leadership team. Once the leadership team owned it, and it's not an easy task, let's be very honest about that, because you find people in commercial, they've got targets to meet. You find people in technology, they've got targets to meet. How do you then make sure that the SDGs are relevant to them? And so once we cascaded the goals, and they started now discussing in groups, because we had champions in each function. Once they decided discussing that in groups, it became very easy for them to create a narrative that actually reflects the SDGs alongside what they do every day. And once that was adopted, and I'll read for you some of the things that each division was stating. By way of example, for instance, let me look at finance, what they saw. So the finance division said something like this: we, the finance division, will encourage ethical behavior in our supply chain by promoting decent work, good labor standards, and that is goal number 8, ensuring transparency and visibility on our procurement practices and fighting forms, that's goal number 16. Within our business and our business ecosystem, we will also support the company to make informed decisions about responsible consumption and production. So that is as a result of the engagement that finance decision had within it, and they came up with their relationship with the SDGs. You could see that there are about 3 SDGs incorporated in that statement. Let me allow, if you may, Frank, if Karen, who has been doing this as a way of life, if she can get into some details. But that is what started. And
No, go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
I was just saying that it was the leadership, the executive team first, and then the executive team taking that and working with their respective teams. We had a sustainability team. At that time, it was led by Sanda Ojambo, and then Karen took over. And so they worked, how do we engage this? Is this relevant for us? Is it good for our business, and so on? And then, of course, we have to then share with the board and to get board, ownership of the entire SDG strategy. Yeah.
Okay, Joe, and I'll come to Karen in a bit, but just following your thread, because you raised some really interesting things. But before I go to my question, the one other stakeholder that I'd like you to talk about, how did you, because you're a listed company, how did you bring the shareholders along with you on this journey?
Okay, so with the shareholders, and you have to understand that with the shareholders, even the ESG discussion had taken place much earlier, and the shareholders are very keen on ESG. So it wasn't very difficult to share that with them. In fact, they were very, very pleased to see that we're incorporating that. But it is the ESG angle that was critical in gaining the shareholder ownership.
Okay, so that's good to know. Now, when you read those finance statements, what really impressed me about those statements is the finance department looked for opportunities not just within the company, but also outside the company in the supply chain and your suppliers. Right. That is because it's about how you as a corporate not just change how you do business, but also how you influence your ecosystem. Do you want to speak a bit more about that?
Yeah, so, for us as a business, we are as successful as our value chain. We are as successful as the weakest link along that chain. So supply chain, value chains have to be incorporated. For instance, if we are doing business with our dealers, just for way of example, and the dealers are involved in anything that is unethical, that definitely will reflect on our business. If we have any of our suppliers are engaged in anything unethical, if they engage in child labor, if they engage in any other malpractices, to the extent that they are our service providers, to the extent that they are part of our supply chain, we have to take responsibility for that. So that is, the engagement that here. To the extent that they're responsible for the supply chain, they have to make sure to the very farthest end that our providers do know what things we uphold, what values we uphold, and those are the things that we want to promote even in the context of SDGs. I'm not sure if I've answered your question now, Frank.
Yeah, that's perfect, Joe. That's really perfect. And you know what I like about that as well is too many times when we think about the impact space and our ability to influence some of the issues that our societies and communities are facing, we tend to box that entirely onto CSR. And we forget that the business itself, in how you make decisions, probably has a much bigger influence than the CSR department would ever do. And because you touch a lot more people, you're much bigger in terms of the revenue you have, so on and so forth. So it was really good to see that you're being deliberate about making business decisions that are purpose positive in terms of the impact you're having on your broader ecosystem. So that's very interesting. Now, once again, I'm in the boardroom with you, Joe. I'm sure you had to think about risks and trade-offs when you're making this. What were the risks you were worried about when you're making these decisions as an exco? And what are the trade-offs you feel you have? Did you think, oh, this might affect profits or not of you, or that did not worry you?
I have to be absolutely honest that we never thought of profits, we never thought of that. And probably we started doing what we call the True Value Report, again in 2012, working with KPMG. And among the earliest reports, and we've been having these reports on an annual basis, and again, I have to defer to Karen, who is looking after this, we found that the true value of our business activities, the true value of our revenue and our profits, so is actually the true value of the impact we have on society is actually 10 times of our profit. This was calculated by an external entity, KPMG, And it was very rewarding for us that it's not so much the profit, but the impact that you have on society. And according to KPMG, and they've done with us the report in subsequent years, that our true value is much higher than the profits that we declare. And therefore, that was a source of great encouragement. And please note that was in 2012. We're talking about SDGs in 2015, are saying that our impact on society is much, much more than is reflected in the balance sheet or in the statement of accounts and so on.
Yeah. And Joe, who led this initiative internally? Was it led by the foundation, or did the business and the organization leadership take the drive to make this happen?
So there was a special team that was set up. This was called the sustainability team. So it was their responsibility to work closely with the consultants to sort of guide the business in the areas that we need to focus on from an SDG perspective. And as Karen will tell you, that it was not always an easy conversation. It took time. And over time, as different business units began to realize that this is good for business. If we take technology, for instance, that the focus was on climate change, the need for renewable energy, and so on. When they began to see this, I think it was a much easier sell from a business standpoint to the various business units.
Okay. And if you have any questions for Karen and Joe, please put them in the chat. Joe, my last question to you before I go to Karen, the big question here for anyone who's listening is, did this have any effects on your share price and brand perception? So when people on the stock exchange of Nairobi look at Safaricom stocks, or when people are looking at your brand, what impact did this have?
I think it's fair to say that the share price really gained. It's just a pity that I wasn't able to come up with the figures, but the share price gained significantly. Let me tell you that at some point, our share price was at 2 shilling and 50 cents. This is Kenya shilling 2.50 cents. And this rose to above 30. Yeah. And I think before COVID, we were doing something that close to 40. So over that period, the share price was not impacted. It has since gone down because of some of which to do with the expansion that we have made into Ethiopia and so on and so forth. But nothing negative as a result of the fact that we were implementing SDGs, or rather incorporating SDGs into our corporate goals. If anything, this was very good for our business from a share price perspective. We gained in terms of goodwill with our customers, in terms of goodwill with our business partners. It earned us a lot of mileage, and challenged them as well to start incorporating SDGs into their own business objectives.
Yeah. And Joe, if I remember correctly, at some point Safaricom was probably 50% of the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Am I right about that?
I'm sorry. I'm saying I was struggling to hear you.
I'm saying at some point Safaricom was about 50% of the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, it was above 50. It was around 55, 58%.
Yes. Can you imagine one company in the biggest stock exchange market?
I don't want to say that was purely because of SDGs. Maybe that is the next question.
No, for sure.
But SDGs, yeah, I think ESG and SDGs per se, they had a good effect, good impact on the share price. But I cannot say it was solely as a result of that the share price gained to make us 50% and above of the stock exchange.
Yeah, I guess I look at it from the flip side. That it did not, the fact that you implemented them did not affect your share price. If anything, probably boosted your share price in the process. Yeah. So let's move over to Karen. Karen, so you are looking at the implementation of all of these internally. So the leadership has decided, you're part of the leadership, they decided, okay, this is how we're going to go. How was this sold to the organization? How did you guys roll it out? Joe has mentioned a bit about champions, but explain to me how you actually operationalize this particular initiative.
Thank you so much. So sorry, I'm just from the field, so I'll switch off my video. I just wanted to say hi and you can see my face.
Okay.
So let me take a step back and thank you, Joe, for creating the picture and painting the picture of where we started. Let me take a step back and say we had started from implementing sustainability. So that was around 2011, we developed the frameworks. And then 2012, we started the journey of sustainability reporting. So we had put in place champions across the business. At that time, we had 40 champions who are helping us with data collection. But before you could become a champion, we had to train you. Remember, this was a new discussion in the business, and we didn't want anyone in the business feeling like we are adding extra work. So we had to bring in a pool of champions, train these champions, and start working with them. And we had onboarded KPMG as the training partner and as our partner in sustainability. So come 2015, when the Sustainable Development Goals were announced globally, as a business, we knew this is an opportunity to enhance our sustainability and purpose journey. So we looked at the goals, 169 targets, 200 and something indicators, 17 goals, and asked ourselves, what can the goals do for us? Not what can we do for the goals. What can these goals do for us? What do these goals mean for our journey that we were on? And so at this point, we looked at all the goals and said, okay, it makes sense to pick 9. And we knew if we impact these 9 goals that we picked strongly, then the ripple effect will ensure that the 17 goals are covered. So we had to go through each and every goal, the targets, the indicators, understand the spirit of the goal, then come back and craft what this would look like. And across the business, we went to each division and said, so how did we do it? The how was, these are 17 goals, these are the indicators. We sat with each and every business leader. Remember, we have a pool of trained champions, so they are leading us to understand their business strategy. So we sit with the leader, we dissect the strategy, and then from what the leader is saying, and us having the expertise of the SDGs, then we would say this links very well to goal number 9, which is maybe industry, innovation, and infrastructure, which is our core goal, because that's what we do. So that's how we were looking at the linkages from the language of the business. And being the sustainability team, earlier on, we had learned that for us to succeed, we must speak business. So if we went with the philanthropic hat or that space, it wouldn't have worked. So what we did was to speak the language of the business, get the strategy, and start mainstreaming sustainability, the SDGs into the strategy. And so for us, we look at the SDGs as a framework of operationalizing sustainable business ideas.
Okay, interesting. So broken down to 9, had people lead it within the departments, and try and embed it in a language that speaks to their own objectives and goals. Okay, that's fascinating. So tell me, how does it look like now? How do you keep this alive so that it's just not one of those corporate initiatives that is stuck on a poster at the reception and no one then looks at it until we're about to write our annual report? So how do you keep this alive from a KPIs, incentives, annual report? Just walk us through that scenario at the moment.
Okay, so come 2016, we decide the best way to do this is integrate this into performance, into incentives, and into the reporting. So we decided to look at this. Remember, we've already started discussing aligning it into the business strategy. Now it is in the strategy. So we had to ensure that everyone in the business, from employees to suppliers to senior management, understand the correlation between the SDGs and business performance. So we sat down with HR and said, when you are choosing your business performance, you have to have a drop-down menu that asks you, what SDG are you delivering? So, for instance, if I say I work in innovation and I'm looking after a certain innovation, then I have to say either I'm delivering against SDG 9, which is industry innovation and infrastructure, or I'm delivering against SDG 8, which is decent work. So each and everyone had to go through training. We developed the SDGs handbook that gave exactly our thinking. So the SDG, the targets, and the thinking behind it, so that everyone in the business had a guide to use, had a guide to use in their business performance. So we linked it into the business performance. And at this time, Joe has talked to you about what was happening at the top. At the bottom, which is now where the champions and the teams were, we were also working. So working on something called the top-down co-creation model. So the leadership are discussing, and then the champions are discussing on how to get this working. So we worked with the senior leadership team. We went to divisions, as I had said. We looked at the goals. We looked at campaigns around the divisions. We had different kind of action plans that we were integrating throughout the divisions, and the chiefs, at that time, I think they were called directors, each and everyone owning their SDGs. We had posters. I know you've said putting posters, but we had posters just to show this division is working on this. And right now we're in the process of rejigging this with our mission thinking to say, if I deliver my mission, this mission that I'm working on as a leader, then I impact this SDG. So the language is there, we are still using this. So when we did this and making it into our day-to-day operations, making it functional, making people responsible for it, then the board and management teams, we started supporting the teams and champions who are doing this, because without this pool of champions, we would not have been able to implement this. So now in Safaricom, we work with the agile working infrastructure, the agile working ways. So we've integrated the same within the agile working ways. And then if you look at our annual sustainability report, we realized that when we were doing this, we had to go back and ask ourselves, materiality. What is material to us? So sustainability has the materiality concept. So we looked at each of the material issues in sustainability, then linked them to the SDGs. So that's how to ensure that you don't leave the SDGs behind and they become something on a poster. So once we linked the business strategy, we linked sustainability, materiality, then we linked the SDGs. So to date, if you look at all these sustainable business reports we've produced from 2015, you will see each material issues and the underlying sustainable development goals that we looked at. So at this juncture, Frank, sorry, I have a very terrible cold. Allow me to hand you over to Eve, if you're still there, so that she can take you through what we are doing. But that was the spirit, and I must thank Joe and the leadership team of Safaricom for this. And I just want to remind Joe, when he was the Director of Strategy and Innovation, he made a quote that said, it has always been very clear to me that sustainability is part and parcel of the business strategy. However, it was not evident at first how it could contribute to our operational excellence and how to position it within our core business strategy. But Joe really gave us lots of latitude as the sustainability team, because as I mentioned earlier, we didn't know where we were going, but we knew this is good for business. And so once we knew this is good for business, we have grown from that time to be able to demonstrate the value of sustainability. And I can say the recent sustainability linked loan we got showed us that the journey has not been in vain. We've been on a good journey and will still continue on this journey. So allow me to hand over to Eve so that she can answer, then I can come back at the end. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Karen. And sorry about your voice. I really hope you get better. Yeah, wishing you a quick recovery. So Eve, I've got a few more current questions for you. And please keep channeling the questions through the chat. I'll try to get to as many of them as I possibly can. But if welcome. So the next question I was going to be is that you seem to have done a lot internally with your employees. But Joe mentioned something very interesting a bit earlier about how your SDGs were deliberate about connecting with the external stakeholders. How have you then taken this into your relationship with your suppliers and customers? Just what does that feel like in terms of trying to take the same ethos down to your supply chains and your value networks?
Thank you very much, Frank. So I'll take you back to what Karen and Joe have alluded to in their earlier presentations. And when it comes to embedding SDGs, it all goes back to, we started from embedding sustainable business practice across the entire value chain. So if I can give an example of what it looks like from a customer perspective, is you find even as in the whole spirit of ensuring we leave no one behind, we extend that to our entire value chain. So from a supply chain perspective, is we sit with our suppliers, and in the finance statement that Joe spoke to, you clearly saw there was an aspect of commitment to working with supply chain. So from a supply chain perspective, one good example is last year, together with Global Compact, we partnered and implemented a program called Sustainable Supply Chain Impact Program. And why this program was important, it was a program mainly geared towards supporting our SMEs within our supply chain. And it was mainly looking at how do we support them in embedding sustainable business practices across their business. And they went through an 8-week training program. And based on that is you're finding it's looking at incrementally making iterative progress around mindset shift, so that even as we make improvements, as we grow our business, we are also growing with our suppliers. Then also from, it goes a step further, and if you to go back and look at our ESG setting targets, for instance, we have targets around, say, inclusion and diversity. And one such example is looking at getting to 10% spend of all our 10% of our supply chain spend going to special interest groups. These are women, youth, and persons with disability. Then over and above that, we go a step further and even looking and interrogating our data, going back to even look at what's the spread and what are the gaps and what are the barriers to access to have these people participating in that particular value chain. So like say one initiative, we also have an initiative like the Women in Business program. And with Women in Business, we use this as the avenue to provide capacity building to our female-owned suppliers. Then if it's looking at providing access to funding, how can we leverage on our networks to perhaps have conversations with financial institutions to provide preferential or reduce the barriers on access to funding.
Okay. And what impact has that had on your supply chain? Are you able to measure like just the change of practice, the adoption of these sustainability practices? Yes,
there's been an impact. And if I can give an example, and I can point to something around environment and planet. So within our purpose strategy, we have targets around being a net zero company by 2050. So we've set up our targets, but we go a step further in working with our suppliers, especially like the high value suppliers, on working with them the journey around setting their science-based targets. And in the last 2 years, for instance, we have 2 such suppliers who've gone a step further to set their science-based targets. So you can see, even as we're working on making improvements around our environment footprint, we're not just working alone, we are working and bringing along our other vendors along the journey.
Okay, so back to Safaricom internally, all this stuff that you've done around engaging employees, embedding this into your performance management, has it been worth it for the organization? If you think about improved performance, employee engagement, all that kind of stuff. Has it been worth the investment? Is this something you look back and you guys think, yeah, this is something we must continue doing? The employees are happy about being in Safaricom, so on and so forth. Give us a sense of where you guys are with that.
I must say, and I could pass as biased because one, I'm an employee here, but from an employee value proposition, I'd like to believe that our purpose, transforming lives, is one rallying call that gets us to feel a sense of purpose every other day. And looking at the cascades that have been done from SDG integration and looking at the whole top-down, bottom-up approach and the co-creation approach that Karen was speaking about, there is a sense of ownership and every other day across all divisions. So ownership where the conversation around SDGs, the conversation around purpose moves away from just sitting within sustainable business and social impact to a theme and a rallying call and purpose that's shared across throughout the organization. Then from an employee engagement perspective, there are very many numerous opportunities which are presented to employees every other day. And even in the spirit of walking the talk, for instance, from a HR perspective, we are entitled to CSR days. So meaning over and above your leave days, you have days that you can take to go and work in the communities, work in either a foundation project. Then over and above that, also looking from a foundation perspective, we have an initiative called Pamoja Initiative, which is an initiative where employees get an opportunity to give back to the community. So it is a so employees contribute a certain percentage, and the business tops up like 90% of the project cost. So even from a sense of ownership, as we work every other day, we feel we also have an opportunity to contribute either back in our rural homes or in whichever projects that are fulfilling and align with what we are working on.
So in essence, the Pamoja initiative enables I as an employee to choose a project of my desire. I make a contribution and the organization offers a match funding or other resources to that particular project. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, and it's usually an application process. There's a shortlist, there's a criteria, and when you look at even in terms of the criteria and the projects under consideration, all tie back to all tie back and align with the SDGs that we're supporting, and align with our respective purpose pillars and purpose priorities. So if you look at how the SDGs ties it all in together, is we'll have the purpose strategy, we'll have the business strategy, and we will use the SDGs as the delivery vehicle to deliver on all this. So they don't sit separately.
Okay, fantastic. So
yeah.
I've got one more last question for you before I take on the questions in the chat, and please do post additional questions in the chat. I'll come to them right now. So Eve, I'm gonna play a bit of a devil's advocate here and say, some people might argue, but well, it's Safaricom, so they have the resources to do all of these things. Other organizations might not be able to do that. What's your reaction to that?
I think could be a fair argument, but I like to look at it differently in the sense that the bigger challenge here calls for a mindset shift. And if we take a step back and looking at, if you embed sustainable business practices, it is a way of ensuring that your business outlives you, and you also get your if you get your purpose right, if you also right on the people, the profits will follow. So how I'd like to challenge people on the call and those who might watch the recording is look at this as a business case around we invested in purpose, ensure that there is common ownership, common understanding, and there's value demonstrated. Then investing in the right people. And people here we're looking at internally, we're looking at our entire ecosystem, how we're showing up in the communities, looking at our supply chain, for instance, and the profits will follow. So it's mostly moving a lot to the mindset shift and focusing more on iterative processes. You don't have to get everything right from the onset. And even right now, from a reporting perspective, while we've been reporting for the last 13 years, every other year we report on our achievements, we report on our learnings, and we always have additional, we always discover or learn additional ways we can improve the way we do business. So I'd like to urge guys to look at it from an iterative process. Just build on the stepping stones. Just start slowly and build on gradually. You don't have to get everything right from the onset.
Yeah, Frank, if I may just say something before we move.
Yes.
I think you asked a question to Eve on supply chain, and I'm very passionate about this. I want to paint a picture for you. One time, as sustainability champions, we were seated celebrating with the then CEO, Bob Collymore. We were feeling so proud of our achievements. And at that time, the supply chain manager asked a simple question: how much is a cup of tea? So when he asked that question, we didn't know where it was going to. And at this point, he said, at Safaricom, we pay 20 shillings for a cup of tea. Yet even outside, you can't get a decent cup of tea with 100 shillings. So this question triggered lots of work under what at that time we called the silent worker. The silent workers were the people who make tea for us and the guards. And we realized that as we went along sustainability, we classified the high-risk suppliers and the low-risk suppliers. And so we started looking at the suppliers and asking simple questions like, do you have this policy? Does the supply chain, does the invisible worker know their pay slip? And that kind of thing. This changed the trajectory of supply chain relationship in Safaricom. At some point, we used to give 90 days payment plans. But because of sustainability, we reduced this to a 30-day payment cycle. The other thing we started asking, who are the suppliers? Where are the women-led businesses?
Yes.
Under gender and diversity. So sustainability and the SDGs helped us ask the uncomfortable questions and confront what we didn't want. And that's where we made targets like, we want 10% of procurement spend going to women-led businesses, people with disability businesses, youth. So if we hadn't started looking at sustainable supply chains, we would never have been able to dice and look and say, who are we leaving behind as a business? And I like what Eve said. When you look at the business, how are we moving and how do we carry our suppliers? So every year we have the annual supply chain summit, let me call it a summit, where we still sit and talk about sustainability. We tell them what we are doing, the new thinking, and the sustainability team is at hand to work with our suppliers to help upgrade and upskill them. And in Safaricom, all our 90% of our suppliers have signed to the Business Code of Conduct, and we encourage them to join the United Nations Global Compact. And I laugh because it's come full circle. That's what's under heads. We encourage them to join the local network so that they are on a journey of their own in sustainability, but they are working with others. So we have put in measures in place to encourage our suppliers to be part and parcel of this journey.
That's a really cool story, Karen. It's a really cool story to tell. That's a really, really good story. And you know what I like about what you've just said is you sought for opportunities for continuous improvements. You kept on asking the questions around, are we really doing our best? You know, is there more we can be doing? Is there stuff under the hood that we haven't seen? You open the bonnet and check and see, is the engine truly running as smoothly as it should? And I come back to what we were talking about with Joe earlier, is that in African corporates, and why this was very important for us to do as AVPA, we can deliver a lot more impact through business and business decisions than we can do through our CSR initiatives. Our CSR initiatives are relatively smaller than what we have within our corporate power. That if we ask some of these questions that Karen is asking, how many of our suppliers are women? We have a huge youth unemployment on the continent. How many of our suppliers are youth? those kind of questions could really get us thinking in a slightly different direction, and we can be a lot more deliberate about delivering impact. So this is why we talk about the convergence of profit on purpose. It's not always about spending money. Sometimes it's just how you make decisions and the consciousness of being deliberate about some of these decisions. So Karen, that was a really good story to hear. So before I go into my questions, I'm going to share 2 slides with you very quickly. And I'd also like to recognize the presence of Amanda White. Amanda Williams, sorry. Amanda wrote the first article that got us into these conversations. And we'll try and get, so this is the second webinar in this series. And the first one we featured Amanda, who did some research looking at some of the corporates in the world that have done a good job at doing this. And Safaricom was mentioned in that article as one of the top 3 in the world around embedding and inculcating SDGs into their corporate strategy. So it's the genesis and the journey we are on. And there'll be more conversations on this particular topic, because we need corporate Africa to be a big player in the impact space, as we especially experience decline in aid in Africa and a growing public debt, which means our governments are broke. So corporate Africa has a significant role to play in driving impact initiatives towards our 2030 goals. And as I wait for before I go to your questions, just want to let you know we are rolling out a new Climate Investors Forum. This is an impact investing program for climate investors. If you're playing in the climate space, which includes people who are investing in agriculture, circular economy, blue economy, things like regenerative agriculture, water, or any investors playing in that broader climate space, we've got a program for you, super exciting. So far, these are the kind of people you're going to meet. We've got almost a big chunk of the class already applied, and this is a representation of the class so far. We have people from across the continent and even outside. We've got I'm very impressed. We've got a lot more women than we have men. And on the far right, you'll see the kind of people that you'll be engaging with in this program. Majority of the people are very senior leadership, decision makers in organizations, which means you're going to create a really good network of people from this program. And we are very deliberate as AVPA to make sure that the alumni from all our programs are kept connected beyond the program. And the deadline for this is 11th of March. So please, you'll see a link in the chat of how to apply. And then the next thing before I go to the questions is, you may all know that we are getting ready for our conference. We're going to be hosting a big conference in Kenya in November, 4 to 6. So please keep an eye out for that. We are super excited about what we could do with that, what we're going to be doing at that conference. Some great conversations, some huge learning moments are going to be present. So please join us in Kenya at that point in time, 4 to 6, and more detail to follow. So without further ado, let me start into the questions. And Joe, I think the first question will be towards you. And this is from Gunther, who basically asked, did you think about creating a corporate venture fund to invest in startups as well?
Yeah, so thank you very much. The corporate venture fund has indeed been established. That was established within the strategy and innovation function, today called business development and strategy. So yes, that fund was established. It was not a big fund in terms of quantum, but it has supported a number of startups, to get off the ground. They would come at the seed stage and support them to get off the ground. And they've been able to leverage additional funds, Sendy being one of them, for instance. So those Sendy has since folded, but that was one of the funds, startups that benefited from the support of the Safaricom corporate venture fund.
Okay. And Joe, does the venture fund only fund startups in the tech space from Kenya, or you are just give us some context there?
No, we've focused on startups within Kenya.
Okay. All right. Joe, the next question is also, yep.
Sorry, allow me to chime in on that one.
Yes.
Just building on to what Joe said, This year, we relaunched a revamped Spark Accelerator Fund, and that was launched in January this year. And it's been launched in partnership with Safaricom, M-Pesa, and Sumitomo Fund.
Yes. So for those who don't know,
Thank you.
Safaricom's fund is called the Spark Accelerator Fund. So please check it out. If anyone in Safaricom is on the call and can put a link to the fund, that would be really useful. But yes, it's good to know that it's continued to grow in leaps and bounds. Joe, the next question is for you as well. So Peter Wanderi asks, I'm excited to learn about the use of SDG champions at Safaricom. How do they submit their reports on their achievements? And Karen, also, maybe you can chime in with this one as well.
Let me help Joe, because that's more on the operational side.
Yeah.
So we have a portal. So in this portal, you update every month or quarter, depending on your reporting period. It sends you a trigger to remind you to please update your information as per the SDGs. So we have kind of automated the reporting. It's a portal, it sends you a message, then you sit down, report, then the sustainability team goes into the portal, then we collect. When it comes now to doing the annual sustainable business report, we develop very precise templates. And because we know we are human, we also remind you what you said last year, what you committed to do. And then we look at our mission portal, what every team has committed as their mission. So it's a very detailed process of looking through the missions, looking at what we're doing, then linking the SDGs. So that's how we do it.
Okay. I'm curious, Joe and Karen and Eve, if someone came to me and someone has sent me a message asking, would Safaricom be open to sharing your templates around how you're managing this? Would you guys be open to that? Would you open to some of the things that you're doing, at least in terms of the broader architectural framework?
Yes, we can share some, but some I have to get from KPMG. Remember, KPMG is the partner behind this. So they are the ones who structured the questions depending on how we want to do it. And it's also dependent on materiality, because we collect information based on what is material to us and our material SDGs. But I'm always happy to sit down with anyone or if just take you through a flow of how these things look like as we work on them.
Okay, excellent. And Karen, and Joe and Eve, I promise to give you a slot to run a workshop at the conference in November for anyone who's looking to do this. We'll make space for you guys to do like a 2-hour workshop around some of your learnings from this. So my next question is once again from to Joe and Karen and Eve.
Frank,
yes,
before the next question, I just want to add there the point about those who are interested in the format we've used and so on. I think this is crucially important. Why do I say that? If in your opening statement you say that perhaps Africa is aligned to achieve maybe just 2 of the SDGs.
Yes.
We really have to work together. It is very clear that the SDGs without the private sector cannot really be achieved. And I'm not sure, to be honest, whether we have done a good job of engaging the private sector. I know there's been a lot of effort across the board. I personally have had to speak to CEOs in Kenya and in Ethiopia. And oftentimes what I get is skepticism. We do really need to engage a lot more, share our experiences. Yes, what has been done is not easy, but it is doable. We've done it. And so I would really encourage that the sharing of experience is critical so that all of us contribute towards the attainment of these SDGs. I think we have 6 or so years remaining. And we can work together to achieve this. The other thing I want to say that in terms of our own experience, for this to succeed, it starts at the very top. It has to start, there has to be ownership at the very top. If the top is not convinced, then you're not going to get anywhere. At the board level, at the C-suite, there has to be ownership at that level. The third thing that I want to say is that this cannot be seen as an appendage. Attainment of SDGs is not about signing a check. No, it is really about looking at our products and services. To what extent are they contributing towards the attainment of those SDGs? Karen has spoken to other things that we've been doing, like women in business. You know, this is all about equality. And it has not been easy. It has involved us spending money to ensure that the women business leaders are trained to be able to access some of the tenders within the business. And although we have not attained the 10% that Karen talked about, but we have women in business who are really doing an amazing job. You know, like one example is women in business who are doing fiber. You'll never know. You never think of connecting fiber, digging trenches as something that women do. We said that we're not going to do things like stationery and flowers. That those are the things that women do. They have to be at the core of our capex. And training them does cost money, but we've seen very, very good results. So I guess what I'm saying is that when you're talking SDGs, yes, it will cost you, but the reward more than the cost that you're looking at that particular time. Thank you.
Very useful, Joe. Very, very useful. You know, it's about being intentional, being courageous. As I said again, going to places where no one else has gone. Just because no one has done it doesn't mean it's impossible, said Mandela. And most importantly, it's commitment over compliance. I think too many times in corporate spaces where we try and do and get away with the bare minimum, which is compliance, when actually we should go the full length, which is commitment. And this is why even at AVPA, we're always talking about go beyond ESG. ESG is a risk mitigation framework. The world today needs you to not avoid doing harm, is to add to the greater good of people and planet. And that's a big part of what to do. And we shall facilitate, if need be, for Safaricom to give them a platform to share some of the learnings that they've got. Because I think Joe is, and really gracious of Joe, Karen, and Eve to open up your books to share with us and the ecosystem, your learnings and lessons. So something we'll be following up on. Next question from Anna McKenna. Anna leads the Oxford program, the Africa program at Oxford, and she's asking a very pertinent question from her lens: is how do you engage with research from universities and research institutions that have extensive expertise in evidence generation and evaluation development intervention? So, in the work that you're doing, how are you consolidating this into insights and learnings through research, whether it's operational or otherwise, so you can add to the body of knowledge, the greater body of knowledge outside? Any of the three of you can take this.
Let me start. So in everything that we do, let me take back and then forth. So when we had realized that we didn't have a lot of sustainability expertise, it is us that brought on board the Cambridge University, the South African branch, and introduced them to Strathmore Business School and paid for the initial setup of the sustainability program that was run there for executives, because we realized there was a need. So that was level one. Let's democratize the training. So we got Cambridge, shared knowledge with Strathmore, then Strathmore continued running the program. So it still runs. Then we met another partner, brought them, introduced them to Strathmore. That was one. Number two is by helping do case studies. So there've been various case studies that have been done. And I remember you've just mentioned Amanda Williams. When she was doing her study, she reached out to me and we gave her the information. So any scholar who wants to document any part of the sustainability journey, we are happy to partner. So we've opened Safaricom for scholars to come in and do the case studies. And particularly we encourage the local let me not use the word local, but African businesses. Because if you look at the stories that are published, they've been done by Harvard. So we have said, if you are a business, a university, a TVET center, whatever aspect you want to document, we are happy to share all the information because we recognize we cannot write the case studies ourselves. So we have opening up of trainings and then having case studies of the same. And over and above that, we are part of the, we have formed an association called the African Sustainability something, I've forgotten the full name. We are working to bring all sustainability practitioners together so that we can share knowledge and document the journey of growing together as opposed to it just being a Safaricom story. So if Joe and Eve want to add.
Also building on to what Karen has said, in ensuring that we bring to life the SDG conversation, we also have, and we've been running for the last 6 years, an SDG Innovation Challenge that targets universities, colleges, and students in tertiary institutions. And it's mainly looking at them sharing innovations, ideas that are 100% geared towards the SDGs. And you find from these innovations, we've seen very interesting concepts over the years, and we've been doing that for the last 6 years. So we engage across different levels.
Okay, Joe, any comment on that?
No, I think the experts have spoken.
Okay, good. So that's and Karen and Eve, to your points, we really need to build and strengthen local institutions. I think that's our biggest issue. One of the biggest issues we face in this space is we don't have enough institutions in Africa teaching this subject. I mean, it's actually a bit of a shocker right now that you can find people who've gone through a master's program or undergraduate program in Africa and they've never heard of the SDGs. And we expect these people to go out and be the business leaders who are impacting change on the continent, yet they have no context of the challenges that the continent is facing. So those kind of things, we've got to embed some of this stuff in our education system. So the kind of graduate we're producing is actually reflective of the needs that we have. There's no difference between what we're producing now and what the US or British universities are producing. So I totally agree with you. I think it's how we embed some of this stuff. At AVPA, we are battling with these same issues around how do we capacitate universities. We're looking at a universities program to just capacitate African business schools to teach the subject, for example, of impact and sustainable finance. Right now, the whole continent of Africa, we have one school, one university that teaches impact and sustainable finance, and it's just unacceptable. So kudos to you guys for trying to at least capacitate institutions to do this. We'll go through the next questions fairly quickly. So I'll pick on one of you to answer in a short while, so we can go through them. So this one, which SDGs have proved fruitful for Safaricom and which have been more challenging to implement? Karen, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I think for us, the one that was the easiest and natural fit was SDG 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. That was easy. I think SDG 3, good health, and then quality education, 3 and 4. Those were the easiest. And then SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. But the environment ones were easier. But now the challenging SDGs comes to how we have done our climates. So we were struggling, are we doing SDG 13 or are we doing SDG 7? So we settled for SDG 7. That has been where we have housed our climate one. And I say it was a little bit challenging because to do what we needed to do, to remember the network is now 23 years old, or they're about turning 24 this year, for us to meet our aspiration of net zero. You remember when we made that commitment, we were shouting over the roofs, and then we came back, started looking at it from the science-based targets and mapping, and we realized the trajectory at which Safaricom was going by 2074. We will not have achieved the net zero target. So we had to come back in the business and say, how do we ensure we get there by 2030, though we gave the global commitment of 2050. So we've been working backwards. So I think that's the most challenging SDG, because remember, we operate in Kenya, we needed the gensets and the likes, but it needed massive heavy lifting. And we have had to make tough decisions, for instance, saying We are going to move from diesel generators to solar. We're going to try and put batteries before the diesel and that kind of thing. So we had to make deliberate decisions to ensure that this SDG can be met. So I would say that's one of the hardest. The other one is partnerships. Partnerships sound so easy.
Karen, just on that point,
Yes.
I know you normally record, percentage of network that is under renewable green energy. Do you have the latest figure? That would be interesting for our audience, because we track that on an annual basis. Do you have the latest?
Yes, right now, because of the deliberate action, we have, I think, 1,400 sites or thereabouts on renewable energy. Yeah, 1,400 sites out of almost 6,000 sites. So for the longest, we had not hit that target. So we have 1,400, and now we are moving into ensuring that our sites are on renewable energy. So the hardness to implement was based on we are a telecom sector, and we need to always be on. So we were looking at how do we ensure we are expanding a network without growing our carbon footprint. That was the main challenge. And how do we then invest in modernizing the network? Remember, it is a CapEx intensive kind of exercise. And I remember where we started appreciating things like free air cooling. We started saying we don't need AC in all the sites, especially in Nairobi. The temperature is moderate. But remember, when we were setting up these transceiver stations, we had borrowed technology from Europe, where they didn't have the same environments we here in Kenya. So we had to do a lot of thinking. And to me, I think the SDGs and sustainability has challenged Safaricom's way of thinking and doing business in a great way.
So Rosemary asks, fantastic work, Safaricom. Upon reflection, what did you do differently? Lessons learned.
I think for me, we were lucky, if I may say that. We were lucky to have a leadership team that worked very well with us. You can see Joe, quite a good leadership team. But some of the key lessons we learned, and the lessons I tell many people, Joe alluded to the first one, you need the top level management and the board support. If you don't have that support, there's nowhere you're going. So one, that support. Key lesson number two, I alluded to it, speaking the business language. I remember one of the hilarious moments is when we were talking to finance and we are saying we have the 17 goals and we need to do something around it. We can look at how the goals work for us. And the finance team said, okay, let's take one goal per year. So we had totally missed the understanding there. So the key lesson is also don't assume everyone understands what you're saying. And there's a running joke in the sustainability space that if you call a sustainability person and ask them for data, we never have data. That the finance team, if you ask them the sales data for yesterday, even today, they'll give you. So another key lesson, know your numbers, show your numbers, grow your numbers, and impact. So for me, I think those were my key lessons: leadership, knowing what you're doing, and then using the language of the SDGs, leaving no one behind in the journey.
Joe, Eve, any more to add to that? Lessons learned.
Another one I can add around the lessons learned is embracing the automation process as early as possible, especially from a data collection perspective, because it enhances the element of data accuracy. Because you can imagine a business as broad as ours, sometimes you can have, initially you would have a document maybe sitting in a Word document somewhere, another one sitting in Excel, but embracing automation has actually really helped in streamlining that.
Okay. Joe, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think there's goal number 17, which is about partnerships. From the very beginning, involve your partners. From the very beginning, involve your partners. It should not be an afterthought. Yeah, we did a lot of work internally, but very soon we realized that for us to be successful, we have to involve the entire the value chain and so on. So involving partners at a very early stage is absolutely critical. And then what my colleagues have said, which I'll just repeat, communicate, communicate, communicate. I think that is absolutely also critical so that the message gets across. And then, as Karen has said, it has to be in a language, that the team understands. If it is something that appears academic, then you'll never hack it.
Okay, so I've got two more questions for you guys because I know we're getting to the end of the webinar. The first one is from Manele. The issues about greenwashing and other practices that we see that could damage some of the initiatives around impact in the ecosystem. What's your view around that? Are we seeing regulatory loopholes that are leading or opening up to greenwashing? Is there stuff you think we should be doing differently? What kind of policy changes do we need to influence? Just your thoughts around greenwashing and the regulatory and reporting loopholes. Karen, I think this is probably down your alley.
Yeah. So when I look at greenwashing is something that came up, and some companies globally have been accused of greenwashing and misleading information. So what we have done to guard against this is to get assurance on all our sustainability material things. If I stand up here and say Safaricom contributes 10 points times our profit, that number has been assured. Remember, in the financials, why they don't have sustainability, they don't have the financial washing, let me call it that. It's because they do have an auditor, and there is always external audits. So in the practice of sustainability, that's why our external assurance services exist, so that somebody else comes in and looks. And if you say I've grown 1 million trees, they can count and see where your 1 million trees are. And I think when you look at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, they've developed good guidelines that for now are voluntary for any company listed on the stock exchange to borrow from as good practice. When it comes to Kenya and Africa at large, we have not developed sustainability kind of regulations. It is still voluntary. So I always say, for the sake of your peace as a business or as an institution, it's good to be able to prove what you say so that you're not accused of greenwashing. And I've told you, assurance is one of the ways to give you credibility in this agenda.
Yeah, and kind of that's a really good point, because that's actually what is lacking in like many ESG initiatives, that there's no assurance. And for people, assurance is synonymous to audit. So someone going to audit your claims to make sure that they're real. And it's really encouraging to see that you're doing this. Not many organizations actually have an assurance or an audit process to their claims. So that is really encouraging to see about this. So I've got one more question from Danson Gishini from the World Economic Forum, who says there's much data proving that integrating sustainability and social impact into businesses is not just a nice to do, but more profitable. In addition to internal reporting and compliance measures, what can be done to raise awareness and to prove external companies that sustainability, social impact is actually more profitable for businesses? How can companies better work with governments to incentivize more sustainable and inclusive business practice in a national, regional level? So I'd also be quite keen to just add to Danson's question is, have you had a chance to take what you've learned and influence governments in either practice or policy with regards to them making the space a lot more easy for more organizations to do what you're doing?
I like that question. It reminds me of when 1 year I delayed in launching the sustainability report, and I was called by the Kenya School of Government and asked, where is your report? And I asked the person, what's your interest? And he said they use the Safaricom report as part of their teaching material. So I think that's a good way to start from. And also, I think one of the things that influenced the Nairobi Stock Securities Exchange to develop these guidelines, and I was part of the people who reviewed those guidelines and shared lots of suggestions and practices, because I was speaking from a practical point, is because Safaricom had done it. We had done it consistently for 10 years by the time Securities Exchange started working on it. So we have indeed influenced policy in different forms and shape, from steering the Nairobi Securities Exchange into this direction, also looking at formation of new institutions. I think when Safaricom started growing our trees, our tree growing program, we worked with KFS, and then we told government, we are doing this because we want to use this to offset Safaricom's carbon footprint. If you see the recent discussions in this government, we are now looking at, the government has come up with different carbon mechanisms in which now, if you're growing trees, you can benefit from those. So by practice and by just pushing inch by inch, we're able to influence policy softly and also use lots of advocacy to say, you know what, as we do this, it would be good to look at incentivizing this. So we've been having discussions on incentivizing and then doing it. But I want to say for Safaricom, when we started doing sustainability, it was because we strongly believed that we want to be a sustainable business. We want to be here 100 years from now. We never did it so that we can be given government incentives, and we will not do it because we want to be given. We believe it's a right thing to do. So we come from a very different point. But what I can say is that by doing these things and deliberately asking ourselves the tough questions, then the profits follow. So for me, it's the spirit in which we do it. But yes, along the way, we share best practices, we share best relations, and then these are done or borrowed by other companies and players. And I must say, personally and also as a business, we have mentored many businesses. Any of the young sustainability leaders in the business in Kenya have passed through me, either as a mentee or came through Safaricom to learn, to copy with, borrow with pride, let me not call it, but borrow with pride, and also just sharpen each other when different companies, the big ones and also the SMEs, we do have lots of sustainability discussions with them just to understand, so that they can understand. And for me, we've had a journey, as I said, where the path, there was no path. I'm always happy to help anyone leapfrog us, jump ahead, so that you don't go through the painful process that we've gone through, so that you can have a smooth landing ahead.
I could talk to you guys for a long time. Joe and Eve, with Eve going first, any closing remarks?
So from my end, first of all, thank you, Frank and AVPA, for the opportunity to be able to share our experience. I just want to repeat that SDGs, from the time they were formulated, this is about giving dignity to our people. This is about really attacking issues that impact the planet. This is about moving people out of poverty. And this is about reducing inequalities across the board. Tafadhali, let us work together to ensure that the SDGs are attained. Whatever it is that we can do. And we're not saying that we have done everything that can possibly be done. We are also learning. But what an opportunity we have to work together. Again, I emphasize that let us work together towards the attainment of SDGs. Thank you.
I'm not sure if Eve is on the call. Eve, are you there? I saw you dropped off for a bit.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, one of my gadget froze, so I had to join using another one. So sorry for that.
No worries.
But this was an incredible. It was an incredible session. And for those who are looking at starting on the journey of embedding sustainability or embedding SDGs across the business, my encouragement is to go back to ensuring that we're starting from a mindset shift and building on an iterative process. So look at making improvements year on year, and we are open to provide learnings and from our journey.
Joe, Eve, Karen, thank you so much. And to the audience who stayed with us for the duration of the webinar, really grateful. But to the three of you, this has been really fascinating. I have been excited I always knew a bit about Safaricom. I didn't know as much as I know now. It really helps me be able to tell the story of African excellence as well. This for me was not just about you guys sharing a story, but sharing about African excellence and African excellence in creating solutions that are African born to solve our African problems. This is what makes me really proud about the work that I do, is we get to connect with people like you who are really solving for local needs in a sustainable local way, with local talent. That is very fascinating. But it's also a story of commitment. It's a story of leadership. It's a story of ownership. It's a story of accountability. And it's a story of humility in saying, we don't know what we don't know. We'll learn from people. We'll share what we have. And what we can build together as a community is better than what any of us can do on our own. So to Safaricom, to Joe, Karen, and Eve, thank you so much. Karen, I hope you get better. And to the audience, thank you so much for your time. We'll be sharing some more detail about follow-on webinars in this particular subject. But once again, thank you for your time. And don't forget the conference and the Climate Investors Forum for you to register. Have a good evening. Thank you, everyone.